Welcome to this video, which is all about the daily practice of being a white witch and what that actually means for me, how I kind of go about my daily life, kind of within that capacity, if you like. So I guess I've always felt from quite an early age that I was different, and as time has gone on, I've found out some of the reasons why that may be the case. Initially, as a child, I guess I just felt that I didn't really fit in. But as time has gone on, I've kind of recognised that there may well be very important reasons for that. So starting from the beginning, my grandmother was someone who read tea leaves, and she was also someone that read tarot cards. And for her, in the time that she was alive, there wasn't a great deal of money to go around, and probably not necessarily the availability of tarot cards that we find today. So the tarot cards that she had were playing cards, and that she wrote symbols on, I believe, from talking to family members. And perhaps that is how people read tarot in the past. It's not something that I've looked into. I may well do that, and if I find out more, I'll share that here on my YouTube channel. But that's the way that she read tarot cards, and as I say, she also read tea leaves. I do think with reading tea leaves and with reading tarot, you do need to have some kind of structure, some sort of learning, some sort of guidance in how to do it in order to do it successfully. But I also think, there are obviously people with innate abilities, where you perhaps do have some kind of second sight, some kind of sort of deeper intuition. Of course, most of us have, some kind of intuition, but I guess there are people in the world who are perhaps sort of hyper intuitive, I suppose, as a reasonable description. So for those people, and I would like to, class myself in that group of people, perhaps we're even greater able to connect with tarot, connect with reading tea leaves, and all of those other wonderful things that make up, the spiritual world and the world of being a practicing white witch. So in terms of my paternal grandmother, when she showed me how to read tea leaves, I think really she was just sort of demonstrating it to me. So I can remember her turning the cup round and the tea leaves inside the cup. But of course, as I say, I was quite young when she passed away, so I don't remember the details. I certainly didn't take any education on that, any learning from that. In terms of other aspects, I've discovered more recently that it may well be partially my astrological sort of alignment on my birth chart that plays a significant part in the way that I see myself and the way that I kind of live my life, the way that I sort of interact with the world. So as I record this video, I'm not yet an expert in terms of astrology, but it is something that I'm interested in, and as time goes on, I am hoping to learn a lot more about that, and as I become more knowledgeable, I will share that wisdom here on my YouTube channel. So what does it mean to be a white witch? How does that play out in daily life? So whether it's something that you're interested in, it may be something that you already know lots about. This is my perspective on it. So first of all, I would say, if I was to give myself a label, I would say I was probably an eclectic witch. So I don't follow a particular discipline. I do take note of the wheel of the year. I do mark all of those celebrations in some way with my family, sometimes on my own as well. I do follow the moon in the sense that I stay aware of the new moon and when the full moon is coming in, and I try and kind of keep a track on that, both from the point of view of checking in with my own feelings and how that relates to the cycle of the moon, but also just because I am interested in it and it's something that I have joy in doing. So in terms of other things that I do, so I guess when I was much younger, I did practice quite a lot of, I created a lot of spells, and I had lots of books on different types of spells, and I think looking back, a lot of those were probably love spells and that kind of thing. And it's not really something that I do now that I'm much older. As I say, there are times where, I may write some things on some pieces of paper that I want to kind of let go of. So, that might be something like, I don't know, overthinking or any kind of bad habit that you might want to let go of. So I would do things like that. I'd write those on pieces of paper, and then I would burn those pieces of paper at a particular point during the year. And by the same token, I would do things like that for, affirmations as well. If you look on my YouTube channel, there is a bay leaf spell on there, which is something that I recently carried out. I think we actually carried it out on New Year's Day, but it can also be carried out on a full moon as well. So things like that, I still do things like that, but in terms of casting a circle, sitting in the centre of the circle, carrying out any kind of sort of long, kind of complicated spells is not something that I do anymore. And there's nothing wrong with practicing in that way. I fully support anyone that wants to do that, but it's not something that I sort of kind of have space for really in my life. But I still, of course, use candles safely, of course. Obviously making sure that they're on a fire safe surface, because that's so important. I still cleanse the house, so by that I mean I will light incense or something like sage, and I will walk around the house with that burning, and then the smoke then cleanses the house. Now, I have no idea how that works or if it works, but for me, I find it helpful for whatever reason. So I would tend to do that fairly often, certainly no particular timetable, but I guess really whenever I feel there's a need to. So if there's been kind of conflict in the house, if there's emotions have been high for whatever reason, then I would probably do it then. Or if I'd felt that I hadn't done it for a while, then I would go around and cleanse the house. Another thing that I do, and this has been more of a recent practice really, is before I practice yoga, I would cleanse the space that I'm about to practice yoga in. And I do that pretty much every time. I wouldn't say, there's a time where I might miss doing it, maybe if I'm short on time. But generally speaking, I would cleanse it. And all that I do is I would light some sage and literally just in a circle and move it around my head, and sometimes I move it in a figure of 8 as well. So that's something else that I do, and I do find that helpful. I think for me, it makes yoga, even though yoga of course is a spiritual practice, for me it sort of it heightens that. It makes it more of a spiritual practice, and it helps me to feel that it's more of a witch orientated yoga practice. So with that in mind, some of the yoga practitioners that I follow on YouTube are either witches, or they have some kind of additional element to their yoga practice. So, if you look on YouTube, there are lots and lots of yoga practitioners on there. I'm sure obviously all of them are wonderful in their own way. But some of them are kind of more, I guess, approach yoga, I would say, in more of an exercise orientated way. But obviously, as I say, it is a spiritual practice anyway. But some of them are more kind of in line with other aspects of spiritual practice. So, they will bring in things like cleansing the space before they begin. They might have some crystals there for their yoga practice that they're sharing with us all on YouTube. And those are the types of yoga practices that I tend to lean to more than, being overly kind of core centric or sort of, you know, focusing on a particular part of the body or whatever, I would tend to sort of bring those elements in, not exclusively, but that's the sort of direction I usually tend to lean in, really. So another thing that I do, or perhaps it's more kind of fair to say another thing that I have, is a pentagram necklace, which I wear all of the time. I never actually take it off. For me, it's as significant as a Christian cross would be to a Christian. The way that I see the pentagram, I tend to see it as a sort of symbol of protection and empowerment. But if you look online, there's quite a few different descriptions for what a pentagram actually means. So the symbolism has different meanings for different groups of people. So some of them include divine goddess, divine feminine. There are links there with the devil as well, which isn't something that I'm interested in or have any kind of, you know, knowledge of whatsoever. But I am interested, of course, in sort of connections with the divine feminine, divine goddess. But I think for me, the reason that I wear the pentagram is for protection, but also for empowerment. Also, I absolutely love the aesthetic of it as well. I feel that it looks quite nice. And I don't know, I feel somehow by wearing it that it kind of does make me feel safer, I suppose. Emotionally safe, I think, is probably the accurate description. So I guess in that sense, protection, empowerment would be the most relevant description for the symbol. So another thing that I do, and again, there's no particular pattern to this, I don't do it at any particular time, just when I feel I need to. So I will sprinkle salt in a circle at the front door and at the back door. Now, I tend to refer to it as salting the step, but we don't actually have a step into our property, either at the front or the back, not as such anyway. So I tend to call it that, so I will sometimes say, I'm just going off to salt the step, but even though there is no step there. I don't really know why I call it that. It may be something to do with the past, and perhaps properties in the past would more likely have a step leading into the property. I don't know, but that's what I call it. But essentially, all it is just taking some standard household salt and then sprinkling it in a circle outside the front of the house and outside the back of the house. So basically, any entrances to the property is where I would apply is probably not the correct term, but I would sprinkle some salt in a circle. Just a small amount, it doesn't need to be a large amount. And why do I do that? What's that about? So again, it's a protection thing. So I think if you look online, you'll see that it's the idea of kind of, you know, sort of dark energies, or, you know, to protect the property, really. So it's to do with that. So I would tend to do it if I felt there was a need to. So that would be a feeling that I would have, you know, internally, where I think, I feel that I need to, you know, sprinkle some salt outside the front and outside the back. If it's something that you want to do, if you have more than 2 entrances to the property, I don't mean windows, just doors, then you'd want to do it in all of those entrances, basically. And again, you know, if you look online, there'll be loads of information about this, but for me, it does make a difference. Now, some people listening may say, well, that's placebo, it's just something that you've imagined, and that may well be the case, but in a sense, perhaps that doesn't matter. If it feels like it makes a difference, then I think it does. But equally, there may be other people listening who are absolutely know far more about this than I do, and completely have absolute faith in, you know, why this works and the reasons why it works, and that's absolutely awesome as well. But it is something that I do, and I feel that it does have a benefit. So another thing that I do is that I have quite a lot of crystals of different types for different purposes. And usually on a full moon I would charge these crystals. Now I haven't actually done this. I didn't manage it on... in fact, no, I've not done it this year actually, so I've not done it in 2024. And there's no reason for that. That wasn't me observing the particular moon, full moon, and thinking, no, this isn't a good time to charge crystals. It is just simply a case of everyday, ordinary, mundane life, if you like, getting in the way of spiritual practice, of witchy practice, as I would tend to call it. So there's no reason for that at all, other than essentially I've just forgotten to do it. But by and large, when I remember, I do charge the crystals in full moon light. Now, again, if you look online, I think there is generally an issue with, charging them if there is a lunar eclipse. That's not usually advised. And I think there may be a few full moons that people say it's not, a good time to charge your crystals. And, take from that what you will. Do your own research and see what you think. Does it make a difference? It's hard to say. I think crystals are helpful. They certainly look beautiful. I like having them in the house. Again, if you look online, there will be some people that say, there's absolutely no need to charge your crystals in the full moon. Crystals have their own energies. Obviously, they're from the earth. They're all created in different ways. So they have their own energies, and they don't need to be charged in the light of the moon. But obviously other people will say that they do benefit from that, and that they become more powerful by charging them in full moonlight. So it's really up to the individual to decide. I quite like to do it, and part of the reason that I like to do it is that practice of charging the crystals up makes me feel more connected to the moon, and it makes me feel more connected to my spiritual practice and my practice of being a witch. Another thing that I do is I try by and large to keep my crystals separate from each other, and by that I mean that they don't touch each other unless they are crystals of the same type. So let's say I've got more than one piece of rose quartz, then I would allow those to touch. But if I have, some red jasper and some rose quartz, then I would keep them separate. And by that I don't mean I keep them in separate rooms, I just mean they're not physically touching. Again, if you look online, you will find information around that. And I think it's the idea that because the crystals have different benefits, different aspects to them, by touching each other, that can kind of change what they are putting out into the ether, if you like. Again, I'm not an expert. Whether that makes a difference or whether it doesn't, I'm not sure. But generally speaking, I do try and keep my crystals separate. But I bear in mind that when crystals are shipped over into this country from another country, or wherever they start their life and however they journey to your household, they are probably at some point touching other crystals. So that's possibly a factor too. So take from that what you will. If you want to keep your crystals separately, then do that. But I do feel that there is something quite magical in charging the crystals in moonlight. The other thing, I guess it's fair to say that if you can, it can be really good to charge them actually outside. However, weather doesn't always help us to do that. So if it's raining, then I would say not. So popping them into the window so that they can connect with the moonlight is just as valid and just as lovely to do. And the other thing as well, I should say, on charging the crystals up, it doesn't matter if it's a cloudy day, it doesn't matter if you can't see the moon, it's still there, the moonlight is still shining down. Obviously it'd be wonderful and perfect if it was a clear day, and obviously if you can, make sure the crystals are, can be seen, if you like, by the moon, so to speak. But if that's not possible, then that's okay too, or at least that's how I see it. And again, you know, do obviously do your own research there and see what you think and see what works for you. So I think those are the main things that I do as a witch, as a person, as someone who's interested in spirituality. I will share more videos like this if this is something that people are interested in and want to hear about. And as I progress through my journey of learning more about astrology, I will certainly share that as well here on YouTube. Thanks so much for being here, and I will record another video as soon as I can.